Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me to give some thoughts on this topic, gamification in science learning. Before that, let me introduce myself first. My name is Athirah Syazwani Binti Abdillah. Okay, to start off into details on what is gamification in science learning, let us take a look on the introduction of gamification first. So, here are the topics that I am going to cover in my part. Firstly, I will state roughly the definition of game and definition of gamification. I will also state about what is gamification in science learning. Secondly, I will talk about gamification concept, which include how does it work to cultivate students' engagement. Next is principle of gamification, and lastly, I will explain about few examples of teaching approaches using gamification. When we talk about game, video game is the first thing that comes to our mind, right? So first thing first, let me ask you, do you like to play games? Of course everyone loves playing games, especially when they need escapism from a hectic day. But there is the game that everyone knows about. What about the real definition of a game? In general context of definition of a game, game is an activity or sport that typically involves skill, knowledge, or chance in which you follow fixed rules and try to win against an opponent. But definition of game in education term are those explicitly designed for the purpose of education or those entertainment games that have incidental or educational values. All types of games may be used in educational environment. However, educational games are games that are specifically designed to help people learn certain subjects, expand concepts, reinforce development, understand an historical event or culture, or even learn a skill. Now, what about gamification? Did you ever heard about it? Gamification can have two meanings. First, it can refer to adopting games into everyday processes. Second, it can mean using game elements and mechanics to make non-games more enjoyable. But in the classroom, we're usually using the second meaning. Gamification is the application of game design elements and game principles in non-game contexts. While gamification in education can be defined as an educational approach that seeks to motivate students by using video game design and game elements in learning environments. Basically, gamification in a simple word is aiding game into non-environment like a website, online community, learning management system to increase participation. Games are extremely beneficial for science education because they naturally lead to the combination of knowledge in order to discern patterns. The exploratory nature of games is ideal for promoting cross-disciplinary scientific collaboration, as solving the next level may require using previous concepts in novel ways. Scientific literacy is characterized by content knowledge, procedural skills, and understanding nature of science as exploratory and ever-changing. Games are excellent for developing scientific literacy because they incorporate motivational scaffolds to engage students, cognitive scaffolds to develop reasoning abilities, and promoting metacognition, forming connections between different knowledge bases. Next, there are 7 concepts of gamification involved. Firstly, the goal. For example, by applying gamification concept, the goal for student is to answer the question or quiz given by the teacher and collect as many rewards or stars. Next, the learning. The learning is involved in gamification concept because in order to answer the questions, the students must have knowledge and pay attention on what they have learned in the particular session. Third, the skills. Gamification environment somehow can develop the skills in students such as communication skills when they answering the questions. Next, there is achievement. For example, the student collects the most number of stars or badges given by the teacher every time they manage to answer the questions from the teacher. It is actually an achievement for the student itself. Furthermore, there is also a challenge for students in order to answer the questions. So of course, challenge is also one of gamification concept. Lastly, there are competition and user engagement, where students compete with their friends to collect more stars or rewards. If the collected rewards are visible to other students, this indirectly leads to students' engagement in the gamification session. As you can see from the slide, this is how gamification works in cultivating students' engagement. When students earn points, receive rewards, overcome challenges, they are now able to unlock new levels. Or when they see their names on the leaderboard, their brain releases dopamine, which makes them feel excited or happy. And then from there, it motivated them to chase after more rewards. So, this is how gamification concept is applied in helping students enhance their learning development. Okay, now we proceed with the next content, which is the principle of gamification. Basically, there are 4 principles of gamification, which are the freedom to fail, the freedom to experiment, the freedom of identities, and the freedom of efforts. Okay, the first one, the freedom to fail. The use of gamification is to learn about something and refresh the knowledge that we already have. So, it is okay to fail and lose in the game. Students must take it as an experience or lesson and learn from the mistakes. The teacher also should not scold the students when they are losing the game. Second, the freedom to experiment. The freedom to experiment means the students can use any type of gamification that they know or they want, such as using Kahoot although they want to learn about the same one topic. Experiment using game will help to identify the understanding of what we learn on the subject. Next, the freedom of identities. The learners or students can choose to show their names or not in the game. Some of students prefer to keep their names confidential, while some students do not mind. So, it is their freedom to choose either to reveal or hide their identities. Lastly, the freedom of efforts. It means that the students can play the game with full focus or casually play the games. The use of gamification is not used to stress out the students, but instead to help students gain knowledge in a fun way. Therefore, it is advisable for teacher not to make it something stressful for students to play. Now, we will take a look at few examples of teaching approaches that use gamification in learning processes. In here, I provided 7 different approaches that teacher can use in the educative settings. The first approach is giving points for meeting academic objectives. Giving points for meeting objectives can be an excellent way to motivate students. It can also help track progress and increase engagement. A teacher can inspire students to see simple sets of questions in a new perspectives. Correct or well-structured answers are scored using a point system, with students moving up through the ranks. Each student's answers represent different points as a reward. For example, answers without evidence can be worth 1 point, a correct answer with 1 piece of evidence worth 2 points, and a correct answer plus 2 pieces of evidence is equals to 3 points. Next approach is same as the first one, but only for non-academic objectives. Giving points for accomplishing non-academic objective is one way to reward students without pressuring them in academic. Teachers can reward points to students' achievement in non-academic tasks such as tidying up the classroom, putting on coats and hats, lining up in a register order, or in their correct houses. Not only that, by giving points to non-academic tasks also can help teachers solve a simple classroom issue like shortening the time to check students' homework. Any students who their homework managed to be checked by teacher before being prompted by teacher is given 2 points. By giving points in non-academic objectives helps motivate learners to meet both academic and non-academic goals, which encourage their overall success. The third teaching approach is creating playful barriers. The point is, one of the primary principles of gamification is the use of encouragement mechanics through the application of playful barriers challenges. These sorts of barriers can be academic or behavioral, social or private, creative or logistical. When teachers issue a challenge to students, the students usually motivated to accept the challenge, especially because they are young people who love challenges. So, teachers can use this opportunity to create interesting educational challenges to attract students to become an active learner. Other than that, there are also teaching approach involving reflection on personalized performance. Reflecting on personalized performance helps students identify and track their progress. It is a good way for learners to self-assess what they have learned, predict the outcomes of future behavior, and determine how far they need to go to succeed. For example, some video games offer a personalized breakdown of the player's performance at the end of each level, detailing enormous data such as achievements, points, strengths, weaknesses, and ways to reflect on their performance and compare with others. Therefore, teachers can do a similar thing like in the video games. While students are leveling up, collecting points, and competing with one another, teachers can start collecting the data, tracking progress, and tailoring roles, rewards, and quests to motivate students further. Not only that, the other best teaching approach on using gamification is through competition. Teachers can create competition within the classroom, whereas the students can compete with their own classmate or other classes, or even with the teacher. For teaching approach using competition, maybe a teacher needs to set up the rules, where students must follow the rules that the teacher sets, and anytime a student follows the rules, the class gets a point. Anytime a student does not follow a rule, the teacher gets a point. This is especially useful for introducing procedures and new behavioral expectations. If the class wins, the teacher can use a sustainable reward, such as a 1-minute dance party, extended break time, or fewer homework tasks. Next, a teacher also can use teaching approach using different methods of progression. Using levels and checkpoints can help students feel like they are progressing through the game. As well as tracking points, teachers can use various checkpoints, levels, or other symbols of progressions which could make them want to find out what happens next and keeps their attention focused on learning. For example, track points over multiple classes. Then, when students reach an important milestone such as 100 points, let them level up. As they progress further, give out sustainable milestone rewards such as extra reading or playtime. Competitive students will race to be the best in their class and grade, which can be exploited by creating quests that require them to recruit lower-level students in quests that require both to practice target skills. Okay, now, the last example of teaching approach, which is providing the option to give badges rather than points. Sometimes, something tangible and symbolic can mean more than receiving points. When students reach certain checkpoints or levels, you may wish to present them with a marker of their success, such as giving them learning badges or stickers. When a student receives a badge from a teacher, a student will feel like they are getting some recognition. So, the other students will feel motivated to do the best so that they can also get the same recognition. Thus, badges work well when it comes to motivating and encouraging students. An effective alternative to points, badges are a great way to implement an element of competition into the classroom. Giving badges also help create a sense of community and increase classroom engagement, which both are beneficial for learning success.
Okay, next, we are going to see on the example of gamification in science learning. I am Betrice Janni and I am going to discuss on this subtopic. For this topic, I'm going to explain on these three contexts, which is first, the differences between game-based learning and gamification learning. Second, the game elements in gamification, and lastly, the example of gamification in science learning. First, let's see the differences between game-based learning and gamification in learning. Gamification in learning is different from game-based learning. Game-based learning makes game as part of the learning process. It is the instructional method that way the student learns specific skills or knowledge from playing an actual games. Meanwhile, gamification is about shaping the game around educational context. In other words, gamification is where we only make use of game elements in non-game context to enhance content comprehension and promote better retention of information, such as storytelling, problem-solving, aesthetic, rules, calibration, competition, reward system, feedback, and learning through trial and error. Okay, now let's see the game elements that should be included in gamification before using gamification in science learning. teacher need to consider this element before using gamification. The first element is narrative. So the game should have narrative element to spawn the creativity and imagination of the student. Second element is immediate feedback. So this is to make clarification on what the student learned or on the student understanding what they are learning during that learning process. Third element is fun. When we're talking about game, it should be fun because to avoid boredom among the students. So teachers should include elements of fun when using gamification in teaching science. Next, teacher also should include elements of scaffolding learning with challenges that increase. This is to make sure that the student can feel the challenges when learning something or to get something in order to finish the games. Number 5 is teachers should include elements of progress indicator, for example like point, bench and leaderboard. This is to tell the student that what they must be done and where they should start and how long the game must go on. And lastly, it should have element of player control. So this is to force the student to make a move so that they can play the game smoothly. Okay, next let's see on the example of gamification in science learning. So this is an example that usually used by teachers in this 21st century learning. The first is virtual reality lesson. The teacher can use virtual reality lesson in teaching science when using gamification method because this virtual reality can be used to help the student see and feel like they are scientists. So this method can be used to cultivate an experimental and exploratory understanding of the world by using reasoning and trial and error to solve scientific puzzles. Second example is teacher can use science-based video games. So these types of games can be used in classroom to enhance the student learning. For example, like Impulse, Quantum Spectra and Revenues, which developed by the Educational Gaming Environment Group. Teacher can let the student play the science-based video game before the classroom activities to give them background experience on the topic discussed. Last, which is the third one, is storyboard games. Teacher can storyboarding a game that can lead in many directions where the student might engage with some type of online game component. For example, by searching for information on the web or with some type of physical science inquiry. For example, in the game, the student might need to decide or choosing between a mysterious substance in powder or tablet form to create a speedy chemical reaction. So the game can lead the student to test the two options scientifically with a rate of reaction experiment. So this is a sum of example that teacher can use in science learning when using gamification method. Other than the three examples of gamification in science learning that I have mentioned before, which is virtual reality lesson, science-based video games, and storyboard games, teachers also can use various types of gamatized online teaching aids. So this is some of gamatized online teaching aids that teachers can use in teaching science when using gamification method. Okay, the first apps is cell and cell structure, which these apps provide visual stunning tools that great for supplementing lesson about cell. The second apps is collision play chemistry, which these apps can help the student to learn about atoms, ions, and bonding through challenge-based gameplay. The third apps is Space by Tinibob, which these apps can help the learner to learn about the sun, the moon, and planet through interactive open-ended play. And the next is Kerbal Space Program, which these apps encourage trial and error learning and makes for great physics and engineering experiment. And the last apps here is Marco Polo Ocean, which these apps can help the student to gain an appreciation for the water that cover much of the Earth's surface. So this is some of gamatized online teaching aids that teacher can use. There are many more. Go and explore. So that's all for example of gamification in science learning. I pass the presentation to the next presenter.
Okay, next, I, Rabi'atul Adawiah Binti Adenan, will explain about the effect of gamification as educational tool in science learning. Okay, there are 4 effects of gamifications as educational tool in science learning. The first one is motivation, second, academic achievement, third, attitude towards science, and fourth, interpersonal relationship. Okay, let's go to the first one. So the first effect is motivation. Gamification is appropriate for multiple teaching levels because it positively affects the success of the teaching mission by improving the levels of participation and motivation for students. It also helps in overcoming the complex academic challenges. The use of games facilitated students' interest in learning and increases their response in science learning. Gamification gives positive impact on the engagement and motivation of the students when implemented in classroom as an educational tool. Based on the study by Al-Azawi and Busco, gamification providing fun, improving students' motivation and motivation in learning. Okay, the second effect is academic achievement. An increase in motivation and engagement level correlates with achievement level where students score higher marks in the tests or quizzes. The study shows 2 basic concepts that correlate with achievement of the student, which are first, deep attention and involvement, second, cognitive absorption. Game application integrated with gaming features, and the main focus was to assess students on what they have gained through learning process and how deep is their knowledge of the content. So, the previous result of the study showed that students who used the game application demonstrated higher performance in the quiz compared to those who did not use the game application. It is supported also by the Al-Shami 2017, which showed the gamification environment's effectiveness in developing achievement. Is also in agreement by the study of Ross 2013 showed the impact of gamification on achievement. Okay, the next effect is attitude towards science. teaching method according to gamification strategy through an educational platform that leads to the development of thinking. It also allows students to discuss and express opinions. This allows the students to express their opinion without embarrassment or fear by raising their interest and increasing their motivation to search for appropriate solution by discussing information and creating a positive collective learning environment in which the students participate in discussion and dialogue. All of this contribute to increasing students' self-confidence, their desire to learn, research and questioning to satisfy curiosity, and the practice of mental openness, which led to the development of attitudes towards science. As the result, shows that the effectiveness of an educational environment based on the strategy of gambling through an educational platform in developing the attitudes towards science. The last effect is interpersonal relationship. By implementing gamification in science learning, results in increased competition between students in the class. Also, in activities which are done as a group, they can success collaborative study easily. Moreover, except of the first week they met, students are rapport with each other every week during their science class. It is supported by Anuar 2014 that said implementing gamification encourage collaboration and discussion among learners. Also studied by Hassan and Bass in 2019, implementing gamification enhance social interaction among learners. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Hello and Assalamualaikum. My name is Aida Nazifa Binti Rahimi. I gonna discuss about the advantages and disadvantages gamification as educational tool in teaching and learning process in learning science. There are 4 advantages that I gonna elaborate. The first advantages is gamification helps students learn faster and more effectively. Most of students love to play a game. Game-based learning is modern approach teaching aid used by the teacher to enhance student learning. Teaching method used in the classroom, either modern method or conventional method, is one of the factors that affect student concentration and understanding. Some students can adapt with the teaching method used by the teacher, but some students cannot. Teacher need to explain through visualization instead of conceptual and theory, so that a student more understand. Therefore, to enhance the understanding, teacher must think creative and critical on how to prepare attractive teaching aid, so that student can be more active in the classroom. Then, game-based learning helps students feel easy in acquiring knowledge, mostly in understanding the concept and solving problem. Teacher who has gamified their lesson have had great success. Not only do students reach learning objective much faster, but they also become more eager to learn and participate in their education. The second objective is collaborative games can foster communication, cooperation, and some cases can foster healthy competition for students. Based on my recent reading, one teacher found that using game leads students to speak 3 times more than usual. Some students love to play, and when playing games, a student feel more free to be social and active with others. We move to the third advantages, which is games are great tool to simultaneously teach and test students. The students' score on the game is good reflection of their understanding of the underlying principles. Games are useful for evaluating students' performance as traditional assessments. According to Hussein, Tan and Idris 2014, game-based learning is widely seen as a medium of entertainment that has been proposed as an effective method to engage students in learning activities. Many students have found that game-based learning is an efficient way of building up their learning motivation and results. The incorporation of game design in instructional design has a significant effect on student learning performance. The The last advantage is game helps students to stimulate their creativity and imagination. Game-based learning helps students in creating a new way thinking. This helps them to develop the skills to think of the world and solve the problem with unbounded novelty. That video was taken months before. This is my research project where I study about the effectiveness of mindset card game as educational tool toward children numeracy skill development. Through this game, we can see that students are having fun while learning games and foster them to communicate with their peers and have a healthy competition. Next, we move to the disadvantages gamification as educational tool in teaching and learning process. There are 3 disadvantages as stated here. First one is mental effect. Educational games can affect students mentally. For instance, students may want to play until they win or advance in the game. According to the study done in England, this determination can cause low self-esteem or aggressive behavior, especially if students keep losing at the game. Additionally, because this game can become so addicting, overuse can cause social isolation and poor social skill. It's important for the student to interact with the world around him or around them and spend their time with their family and their friends. The second disadvantage is waste time. Educational games can also be a major time waster, taking away from time that students could spend studying, being active or participating in social events. For example, at home, parents need to play important role in enforce rules with their children about gaming. Let the children know that he needs to finish his homework or studying before playing any games, including educational games. Set time limit for playing educational games to prevent him from wasting time. The last disadvantage is a physical strain. It's easy for students to feel addicted to computer games, online games, or any games, and they will sit in a certain spot for hours on end playing the game. This long-term use can result in neck ache, back ache, repetitive strain, injuries, eye strain, headache, fatigue, and mood swings. To avoid these physical symptoms, encourage the student to take breaks from the game. Allow them to play the educational game for 30 to an hour, but make sure they still active as well. Be playing outside or involved with the school activities.
Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat sejahtera. My name is Putri Falyani Rahdiah binti Faizil Anuar. As you can see on the screen, my topic for presentation is guideline for teacher to use gamification, and I will elaborate later in this video. Alright, it will take about a few minutes to cover this topic. Alright, the gamification of education is an educational approach that seeks to motivate students by using video game designs and game elements in learning environments. The goal is to maximize enjoyment and also engagement by capturing the interest of learners and inspiring them to continue learning. We can define gamification as a strategy that implements game-like elements into a non-gaming activities to enhance engagement and motivation. Gamification also becoming increasingly used in educational setting for a number of reasons. In short, it also makes the hard stuff more fun by helping to motivate students and make them more engaged with the subject matter. How can we use this pervasive and engaging gaming phenomenon to redesign and supercharge the blended learning experience? Here are few ways to gamify your classroom to boost engagement, collaboration, and learning in remote, hybrid, and in-person learning environment. First of all, adapt old school games for classroom use, such as bingo, dice game, Connect 4, and Scrabble have been around for decades and can be adapted for classroom learning. Put vocabulary words on bingo cards and see if students can match the words after hearing the definition. Working in group, students can play Scrabble by spelling out answers to content-specific question. Secondly, play a digital game. When play a digital game, students will love playing Kahoot, Quizzes, Quizlet Live, and the newest online trivia and games are Brooklet. This free platform also allows teachers to create multiple choice questions that players answer on their own devices. Teachers can also choose from the thousands of quizzes already shared on this site or create content-specific questions to use as pre-assessment quizzes or also exit tickets. Third is, a quest is a mission with an objective. For example, students participate every year in an adventure quest based on the weekly current events reading. Students who correctly answer a specific text-dependent question earn points. The student with the most points after 6 weeks wins a prize. Teachers need to post additional questions on media social such as Twitter to allow students to earn extra points. Quests can also be independent projects or activities for the students who have finished their work. Okay, now I want to explain about the differences between game and gamification. As you can see, gamification and games are two different things. Gamification is about the application of game-like attributes to motivate and encourage the learners to achieve the desired learning outcome. The gamification of learning is an educational approach that seeks to motivate students by using video game design and game elements in learning environment. The goal is to maximize enjoyment and engagement by capturing the interest of learners, aka students, and inspiring them to continue learning. While gaming is a play-based element in a course, some examples are puzzles and bingo games that are embedded into a lesson. Game is also something you play for fun, sport, or as a competitive activity. An example of a game is basketball, or poker, or goldfish, or another example of game is the board, houses, and other parts of Monopoly. As a conclusion, gamification makes games a part of the learning process. It is an instructional method where students learn specific skills or knowledge from playing an actual game. This type of learning takes educational content and transforms it into a game that students can play. On the other hand, gamification only makes use of game elements in a non-game context to enhance content comprehension and promote better retention of information. The main goal is still to improve student engagement, but gamification does not necessarily aim to teach them something new. Thank you.